Imagine waking up one day and realizing that you are nothing more than a collection of all the things you've allowed the world to shape you into. Every thought, every decision, every fleeting desire, what if they weren't entirely your own? What if the person you've come to know as you is little more than a mirage, constructed from the expectations of society, the limits of your upbringing, and the invisible forces of culture? How would you feel if, for a moment, you saw yourself for what you truly are, or more terrifyingly, what you've been taught to be? Now, consider a question that is as ancient as it is urgent. What if the life you've been living isn't yours to begin with? The paradox is maddening. You're told to follow your passion, to chase after the dreams that stir your soul. But at the same time, you're shackled to invisible chains, chains of norms, fears, obligations, and inherited beliefs. They tell you who you should love, what success looks like, and even what it means to be free. But underneath it all, there's a gnawing, aching truth that you've never quite managed to silence. You are trapped in a narrative that isn't yours. Can you escape it? Can you truly be free from the expectations and ideals that have been carved into your identity since childhood? Is there a way to break out of the illusion and forge a life that is entirely your own, where the only force shaping your existence is your own will? What if the key to overcoming all of this fear, this conformity, this endless striving for approval, is something radically simple, yet infinitely complex? What if the answer lies not in transcending the world around you, but in confronting the world within you? This is where the true power of Nietzsche's philosophy comes into play. A philosophy that starts with a single, undeniable truth. The most fundamental obstacle to becoming who you are is not the world outside of you, but the person you think you must be. Nietzsche proposed that we are all imprisoned by a set of values and beliefs that are not our own. These values are not born from our innermost desires, but are passed down through generations, solidified in institutions, and reinforced by society's expectations. The tragedy is that we become so enmeshed in these inherited frameworks that we lose sight of who we truly are. And worse, we cease to even ask the question, who am I, really? At the heart of Nietzsche's work is a terrifying yet liberating realization. The self you've come to identify with may not be your true self at all. In fact, it might be nothing more than a reflection of the societal demands you've internalized. You've been conditioned to fit into a mold that, once it's solidified, becomes almost impossible to escape from. The you that you cling to may be nothing but a shadow, a social construct that has no inherent depth or authenticity. How does one even begin to look beyond this false self? How can you, as a person, start to strip away the layers of conditioning that have been placed upon you? Can it be done at all? Or are we doomed to live and die as mere echoes of the world around us, never truly becoming who we were meant to be? And here lies the great question. If you could shed all the expectations, all the rules, all the illusions you've been given, what would you be left with? Is it possible to free yourself from the inherited chains of culture and history, and in doing so, discover the untapped potential that lies beneath? Or will you always be haunted by the question of who you might have been, had you dared to look inside and ask that one terrifying question, who am I really? This is the challenge Nietzsche offers. His philosophy is a journey into the deepest parts of the human condition. It asks you not only to question who you are, but to strip away the false identities you've accumulated, the masks you've worn to fit into the world. To truly overcome yourself, Nietzsche suggests, you must first be willing to confront your most uncomfortable truths. You must be willing to face the emptiness that might come with the realization that the life you've lived has been largely shaped by external forces. But where does one begin this journey? What's the first step toward freedom from this psychological and philosophical prison? To begin unraveling the illusion of the self, we must first understand the hidden forces that have kept us shackled to it. The problem lies not in a singular external event, but in the very structure of human existence itself. We are born into a world that already has rules. Rules about who we should be, how we should behave, and what we should value. These rules are so deeply ingrained in our psyche that we cannot easily distinguish between what is truly ours and what has been handed down to us. The true tragedy is that, for most of us, we never even question them. The first force in this psychological prison is society. From the moment we are born, we are thrust into a set of expectations that shape every facet of our lives. Parents, teachers, friends, media, and culture at large all impose a set of ideals upon us. These ideals tell us what is good and what is bad, what is right and what is wrong. The very structure of our identities, our sense of self, emerges out of these external forces, often without our conscious awareness. We're taught, from an early age, that there are certain ways of thinking, acting, and being that are acceptable, and other ways that are not. What we don't realize is that these ideals are not universal truths. They are arbitrary cultural constructs. The notion of success, for instance, might be shaped by the expectations of wealth, power, and status. Yet, what happens if you don't subscribe to these values? What happens when you don't align with the established societal standards? The fear of being judged, excluded, or rejected becomes overwhelming. This is where Nietzsche's critique of society is most biting. He called this the slave morality, a moral system built on conformity, mediocrity, and the suppression of individual will. He saw society's ideals as shackles that prevent us from realizing our true potential. According to Nietzsche, people were conditioned by the moral norms of society to accept a life of mediocrity, to surrender to the herd mentality, and to avoid confronting the chaos and uncertainty that comes with true freedom. To Nietzsche, this was not just a minor inconvenience. It was the very thing that kept humanity from achieving greatness. But these external pressures are not the only forces that shape our identity. The second, more insidious factor is our own psyche, our internalized fears, desires, and anxieties. Even if we try to break free from societal expectations, we are still haunted by the narratives we tell ourselves. We fear failure, rejection, and isolation. We are bound by the ghosts of our past mistakes, our insecurities, and our sense of inadequacy. These are the stories we tell ourselves about who we are, and like the societal ideals, they have a profound impact on how we live our lives. Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychologist, suggested that many of these internalized beliefs are part of the shadow, the unconscious parts of ourselves that we refuse to acknowledge. The shadow represents all the qualities we suppress or deny because they don't align with our idealized self-image. However, Jung believed that in order to truly become whole, we must confront and integrate these shadow aspects. This process, which he called individuation, is a journey of confronting the darkest corners of our psyche in order to become more authentic and whole. Nietzsche's philosophy runs parallel to this idea, although he did not speak in terms of the shadow. He proposed that we must confront the will to power within ourselves, the innate drive to assert ourselves in the world, to overcome our weaknesses, and to achieve greatness. But in order to tap into this power, we must first confront our deepest fears, the fear of failure, the fear of being nothing, the fear of chaos. These fears, like the chains of societal expectations, hold us back from realizing our full potential. It's not just fear, though. Another insidious element in this complex web is the herd mentality, a psychological force that compels us to seek validation and approval from others. We are social creatures, and our survival has historically depended on our ability to belong to groups. Yet, the desire to belong can quickly morph into a dependence on external validation. Nietzsche warned against this, arguing that the search for external approval compromises our ability to think and act freely. We begin to shape our actions, thoughts, and even our very identity, based not on our own desires, but on the approval we expect from others. We are told again and again to fit in. And fitting in, by its very nature, means adhering to the norms of society and, in a deeper sense, denying the full scope of who we could be. The more we seek to please others, the more we distance ourselves from our own authentic selves. In this process, we lose sight of the questions that matter. What do I truly want? What is it that I, as an individual, am capable of? This leads us to one of the most profound ideas in Nietzsche's philosophy, the Übermensch, often translated as the overman or superman. The Übermensch is the idealized person who has transcended the limitations imposed by both society and his own psyche. This individual is not bound by the conventional morality of the herd. Instead, the Übermensch creates his own values and lives according to his own will. To Nietzsche, the Übermensch represents the ultimate expression of human freedom, a being who has broken free from the chains of conformity, fear, and dependency, and who lives a life of creativity, power, and authenticity. But here's the catch. The Übermensch is not a finished product. Nietzsche did not suggest that this state was something that one could merely attain. Rather, it is an ongoing process of self-overcoming. It is the constant effort to break free from the chains of inherited beliefs and to create one's own path, one's own meaning, and one's own purpose. This brings us back to our own predicament. If we are to overcome ourselves, we must first recognize the chains we have been wearing all along. We must see how society, culture, and our own psyche have conspired to shape us into a version of ourselves that we never truly chose. We must begin by asking ourselves, what have I been living for? Whose values am I living by? The hidden problem, then, is this. We are prisoners in our own lives, not because of external forces alone, but because we have allowed both society and our own minds to create a false self, a self that is not truly ours. And unless we confront this truth, we will continue living in a cycle of unfulfilled potential, always seeking external validation and never fully understanding what it means to be free. We often think of freedom as a straightforward concept, something that comes from the ability to act without constraint, to live without being told what to do. Yet, the deeper we dig into Nietzsche's philosophy and its psychological implications, the more we realize that freedom is not merely the absence of external forces, but the absence of internal forces, forces that we have allowed to govern us for far too long. These forces may not be visible to the naked eye, but they shape our every action, decision, and relationship. The consequences of living a life that isn't truly ours are profound, both on a personal and societal level. We may not always see it, but they are woven into the very fabric of our existence. Consider your everyday choices. How many of them are truly yours? How many of them are influenced, or even dictated, by external pressures? From the career you choose, to the people you associate with, from the opinions you hold to the things you buy, you may believe that these decisions are made independently. But what if, in reality, they are not as free as you think? The paradox is unsettling. The more we think we are making decisions based on our own desires, the more we realize how deeply they are influenced by societal values, cultural norms, and the opinions of others. This is where the true consequences of living an inauthentic life come to light. When you are not truly free, when your actions are based on someone else's values or expectations, you are not living, but merely surviving. At the individual level, the first consequence of this illusion of freedom is a deep sense of dissatisfaction, what Nietzsche called the sickness of the soul. This dissatisfaction isn't always conscious. It often manifests as a dull, pervasive feeling of emptiness or disconnection. You may achieve the things that society has told you will bring fulfillment, a successful career, a relationship, material wealth, but there is still a nagging feeling that something is missing. It is as if you are playing a part in someone else's script, rather than living your own life. This sense of emptiness is more than just an existential crisis. It is the result of having suppressed or denied who you really are. By conforming to society's expectations, you've created a version of yourself that is alien to your deepest nature. And when we live at odds with our true selves, the consequences are inevitable. Stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical illness. The body and mind are inextricably connected, and when we ignore our authentic desires and needs, the toll is paid in ways we can't always see immediately. Consider also the subtle ways in which we distort our perceptions of the world. Cognitive biases, the unconscious patterns of thought that guide our decision-making, play a large role in keeping us trapped within this inauthentic existence. The confirmation bias encourages us to seek out information that reaffirms our existing beliefs, even if they are flawed or based on societal norms we never questioned. The social comparison bias makes us constantly measure our worth against others, leading to chronic dissatisfaction with our own lives. We are so deeply embedded in these biases that we cannot even see them as we engage in the struggle to measure up to external standards. The herd mentality, the human tendency to conform to the group for the sake of belonging, also plays a critical role. We are wired to follow the crowd because, for much of human history, our survival depended on it. But in today's world, where society values individuality and personal achievement, this instinct often works against us. We end up following the herd not for survival, but for a sense of validation, a sense of belonging that is based not on authenticity, but on approval. And in doing so, we relinquish our own desires and beliefs. In this way, the consequences of living within the framework of societal expectations don't just stay confined to the individual, they extend outward, shaping entire communities and cultures. As we conform to these ideals, we perpetuate them, passing them down to future generations, creating a never-ending cycle of unexamined lives. Entire societies become trapped in this cycle, unable to break free from the values they have collectively internalized. The pursuit of wealth, status, and power becomes not a personal goal, but a collective obsession. And yet, despite all the material success, the collective sense of meaninglessness persists because the very things that give our lives meaning have been based on hollow ideals that do not reflect our deepest needs and desires. This is where Nietzsche's philosophy becomes a revolutionary act. He believed that the root of human suffering, both personal and societal, is the adherence to false values, values that suppress the individual's potential and perpetuate a cycle of existential dissatisfaction. By breaking free from these values, by overcoming the societal and psychological chains that bind us, we can begin to experience life more fully, more authentically. But this is easier said than done. To confront the forces of society, culture, and the mind that shape us, we must first recognize their existence. We must see the ways in which we are trapped in cycles of thought, belief, and behavior that prevent us from living as we truly could. This is the first step toward freedom, but it is also the hardest one, because, for many, the fear of being truly free is greater than the fear of living a life that feels empty. Freedom means facing the unknown, the uncertainty of a life that is not defined by pre-existing values, a life where the very meaning of existence is something you must create for yourself. It is terrifying to confront the void of an existence without the comforting certainties of tradition, culture, and societal norms. And so, we remain trapped in the cycle, continuing to live in ways that provide temporary comfort but never lasting fulfillment. The consequences, then, are clear. By failing to confront our internalized beliefs and societal pressures, we not only live a life that is disconnected from our true selves, but we also perpetuate this disconnection in the world around us. The cycle continues, the dissatisfaction deepens, and we remain prisoners in lives we did not consciously choose. The road to freedom, as Nietzsche envisioned it, is not a smooth, easy path. It is, instead, a rebellion not just against external forces, but against the very mindset that keeps us enslaved to those forces. This is the part where Nietzsche's philosophy truly challenges us. To break free, we must not only change our circumstances, but fundamentally alter the way we think, perceive, and interact with the world. It is a rebellion against conformity, against the idea that we must live according to the scripts that have been handed down to us. It's a radical redefinition of what it means to be human, one that requires courage, resilience, and an unyielding will to create something entirely new. The question now is, how does one begin this rebellion? At the heart of Nietzsche's philosophy is the idea of self-overcoming. This is not about achieving external success or becoming a better version of yourself based on someone else's standards. It is about confronting the limitations of your own mind and the invisible chains you have allowed to govern your life. Self-overcoming requires that you look directly at your weaknesses, your fears, your insecurities, and rather than letting them define you, you must transform them into the very source of your strength. To break free, Nietzsche says, you must first embrace your own chaos. One of his most radical ideas is the amor fati, the love of one's fate. This is not the passive acceptance of whatever life hands you, but the active embracing of life's inherent chaos and unpredictability. In other words, you must stop resisting what is and start accepting it. You must stop wishing for a life without pain, failure, or suffering, because it is only through these very challenges that you will become who you are meant to be. This concept may sound counterintuitive, especially in a world that tells us to avoid discomfort at all costs. But Nietzsche believed that suffering is not only inevitable, it is necessary. It is through struggle that we discover our true potential. This idea, of course, is reminiscent of Nietzsche's famous dictum, "What does not kill me makes me stronger." In embracing hardship, in choosing to face your fears and limitations rather than avoid them, you begin the process of self-overcoming. This is not some abstract philosophical ideal. It is a practical and personal revolution. To truly break free, you must redefine your values, and you can only do this by examining the values that have been imposed upon you. What have you inherited from society, from your family, from culture? Which of these values align with your authentic desires, and which are mere reflections of the expectations others have for you? You must be ruthless in your examination of these values, discarding those that have no real connection to your own will. This is where Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch comes into play. The Übermensch is not simply a figure who embodies greatness. The Übermensch is someone who has created their own values, who has rejected the morality of the herd in favor of a life based on their own inner truth. But this process of self-overcoming is not easy. It requires pain, discomfort, and uncertainty. It is a journey into the unknown, where you must face the void that comes with the realization that you have no fixed identity, no preordained path to follow. You must become the architect of your own existence, a task that may initially feel paralyzing. How does one create meaning in a world that offers no guarantees? The answer, according to Nietzsche, is found in the act of creation itself. The Übermensch is a creator not just of art, ideas, or actions, but of meaning. This process is profoundly individual, and it is something that only you can do for yourself. You are tasked with becoming who you truly are by constantly evolving, by continually shaping and reshaping your own values, desires, and goals. This requires that you trust yourself, that you have the courage to let go of external expectations, and to build a life that is uniquely yours. One way to begin this process of rebellion is to question everything. Not just the obvious things, but even the deepest beliefs you hold about yourself and the world around you. What would your life look like if you removed all the expectations that others have placed on you? If you lived without fear of judgment, without the need for external validation? What choices would you make? How would your relationships change? Your career? Your sense of purpose? To question everything is not an act of nihilism, as some critics of Nietzsche might suggest. Instead, it is the first step in creating your own meaning, in asserting that the value of your life cannot be determined by anyone other than yourself. The rebellion begins with the acknowledgement that you are not beholden to the values of others, and that you have the power to reshape reality according to your own vision. This act of rebellion can be terrifying because it requires a deep confrontation with your own fears, the fear of failure, the fear of rejection, and the fear of the unknown. But it is precisely these fears that hold you back from realizing your full potential. Nietzsche did not advocate for reckless abandon or impulsive action. Rather, he urged that we confront the deepest fears we hold and transcend them not by avoiding them, but by understanding them and embracing them as part of our journey. This rebellion is also a rebellion against complacency. To break free, You must refuse to live passively. You must actively create a life that is filled with meaning, purpose, and excitement. A life where every moment is an opportunity for self-expression, for testing your limits, for pushing beyond your comfort zone. This means that you must stop waiting for the world to tell you who you are. You must define yourself, and in doing so, you may discover new aspects of yourself that you never even knew existed. The path of rebellion, then, is not an escape from the world, but a more intimate engagement with it. It is the realization that you are not the product of external forces, but the creator of your own destiny. To break free from the prison of societal expectations and internalized fears, you must embrace your individuality and start living in alignment with your deepest truths. When you look into the abyss of existence long enough, it begins to look back at you. The deeper you descend into your own psyche, the more you start to see that the struggle isn't just about external forces or societal expectations. It's about something far more profound, something that strikes at the very core of your being. The ultimate realization is that the greatest obstacle to your freedom is not the world around you, but the fear of confronting the void within you. The truth Nietzsche presents is uncomfortable, even terrifying. There is no inherent meaning in life. The world is indifferent, chaotic, and vast in its emptiness. This realization, which Nietzsche called the death of God, doesn't signal the end of meaning. It signifies the freedom to create meaning where none existed before. In a world where there is no cosmic purpose, you are left with a singular, incredible opportunity to become the creator of your own meaning. This insight is the key to the entire process of self-overcoming. When Nietzsche declares that we must live as though we are eternal return, he doesn't mean that we should seek out repetition for its own sake. Rather, he challenges us to live as if each moment were an act of creation, an opportunity to make life meaningful through our actions, decisions, and will. He asks us, if you could live this life over and over, eternally, would you embrace it wholeheartedly? Would you find joy in the struggle, in the suffering, and in the freedom of creating your own path? The most powerful realization here is this: you are not the victim of your circumstances. You are the architect of your life. This freedom is both exhilarating and terrifying because it places the burden of meaning directly on your shoulders. No longer can you hide behind the excuses of fate, circumstance, or other people's expectations. The world may be indifferent, but it is also an empty canvas, and it is yours to paint. The truth is, the only way to truly overcome yourself is to realize that you must stop seeking meaning from the outside. For much of our lives, we look to external sources, whether it's society, religion, or relationships, to define us. We seek validation, approval, and a sense of purpose from others, believing that if we can meet certain standards, we will find fulfillment. But this is an illusion. The ultimate truth that Nietzsche points to is this: you must become your own source of meaning. The creation of meaning does not come from following preordained paths or societal scripts. It comes from the radical act of choosing to define your life on your own terms. This is where the concept of the Übermensch becomes most powerful, not as a distant ideal, but as a living, breathing potential inside each of us. The Übermensch is not a fixed state, but a continual process of self-creation, a refusal to accept anything less than your truest, most authentic self. In this process, you will inevitably confront your own limitations, your fears, your vulnerabilities. But it is precisely through this confrontation that you become free. Nietzsche is not offering a quick fix or a one-size-fits-all solution. Instead, he challenges you to engage deeply with life, to confront the chaos, to embrace the suffering, and to find power within it. The greatest power lies not in avoiding the abyss, but in learning to dance with it, to create with it, to find meaning in its depths. The profound insight here is that there is no final answer, no ultimate truth handed down from on high. The universe is not going to give you the meaning you seek. You must create it yourself. This is the essence of Nietzsche's philosophy. Life is a work of art, and you are the artist. Every decision, every action, every moment can be seen as part of the masterpiece of your existence. And while the journey of self-overcoming is never truly complete, it is in this constant creation, this eternal becoming, that life becomes meaningful. As you look around at the world, at the lives of those who remain trapped in their own illusions, you may feel a sense of sadness or despair. How many people live their entire lives without ever realizing that the only thing that truly binds them is their own fear of freedom? How many people are too afraid to face the void, to embrace the unknown, to live without the safety nets of tradition and societal approval? But here's the final, liberating realization. You are not one of those people. You have the courage to face the emptiness, to step into the chaos, to rebel against the chains that bind you. You are capable of embracing your true self without fear, without hesitation. You can, if you choose, create a life that is yours and yours alone. In the end, Nietzsche's philosophy is not one of nihilism or despair. It is a philosophy of empowerment. The ultimate realization is that in a world without inherent meaning, you are free to create your own. There is no cosmic purpose waiting to be discovered. The meaning of life is something you must make yourself, and it is through this creation, this self-overcoming, that you will find the deepest form of freedom. This is the great gift Nietzsche offers, the freedom to create yourself. The path to overcoming the false self, to breaking free from the illusions of society, to embracing the fullness of your being, is not an easy one. But it is the only path that leads to the truth of who you truly are. As you walk this path, remember, you are not simply a product of the world around you, but a creator, an artist of your own existence. And in that realization lies the power to become truly free.